What's up, everyone? Tim and I are here to talk some Deadpool and Wolverine, but also the biggest San Diego Comic-Con announcements. Not everything, just the biggest ones like RDJ returning as Dr. Doom and maybe some Fantastic Four. And then we'll talk about the little stuff on the back end very briefly.
That's right. As promised, we're obviously going to lead with our thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine because that hit first. But the biggest news of the weekend is definitely RDJ.
For
RDJ
sure.
and the Russo brothers coming back. So we're going to get into all that. But first, we're going to get into Deadpool and Wolverine. Also, I want to mention, first of all, what's up, Variant Nation? But, you know, a lot of people have been asking about the podcast.
Yes.
Is the podcast coming back? When is the podcasting coming back? And we are going to be addressing all of that very soon. We're just not going to do it today because we got a lot to cover. But there is information about the podcast coming, so keep an eye out for that.
They're like, great, is that bad news?
It's not. It's just there's a lot of projects going on, and we're going to be giving you guys kind of a rundown of everything that's going on the Variant side, including a hiatus we have coming up.
You know, it's the equivalent of like when you're out with your parents and they're like, I'm going to talk to you when I get home. You're like, why do I got to wait? Why can't you tell me now?
It is a little bit like that. But we got a hiatus coming up here pretty soon. Why? Because Eris is going to have a new Bambino coming up.
Number 3.
That's right. Number 3 is on his way. So he's going to be out. So we're going to be taking that some time on that to get some projects further down the road. So we'll have content during that time. It's just it won't be as usual. We'll be bringing you guys all up to speed on that very soon.
I think it's funny. Every time I say I have a kid or kids, everyone's like, wait, you have a kid? It's like, on number 3. Not 1, not 2.
Only one more and you catch up to me, man.
No, I'm getting the snippy snip. But anyway, Deadpool and Wolverine. Spoilers, by the way, because it's the weekend's over.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, that's unfortunate. Go see it. But everything we're going to say today is spoilers galore.
And we already did get into some spoilers when we put our review up on Friday. So we put a little bit of but this is going to be like the full, well-rounded thoughts that leads into everything else that happened at SDCC for Marvel over the weekend.
Yeah.
So overall, because you've seen it a second time now.
I saw it Thursday and then I saw it again Friday.
What was your biggest takeaways from the movie?
It was so much fun and fan service. I think Marvel knew what their task was and how much like weight this film was carrying. Like this film had to succeed for people to not like lose complete and utter faith in the MCU because they've established a lot of goodwill over the first 10 years, but these last 5 years they've been losing a lot of that goodwill. So this one's like they had to nail this. And I personally think they did. I would think the general consensus is they did. Just a lot of fun for like diehard nerds like me, people who've been reading comics or following the Fox films, you know, and all that stuff. Blade. This is just everything. Literally, I've talked about on here, on my socials several times, like the cameos I'd want to see. And they did like 80% of the ones that I wanted to see. Yeah. 2 of the biggest ones.
Really?
The biggest one I wanted to see. This is spoiler. So Blade, that was the number one one I wanted to see.
Yeah, you were stoked about
did
that
it.
one.
Channing Tatum was another one that was probably like top 3, top 5. They did it. So I have no complaints because it was just fun. Like I know, you know, people will nitpick it as far as like the story and the filmmaking of it, but it's like, no, we're in here for the nerdy goodness, the action, the lore as far as the MCU goes. So just as a comic book MCU fan, this was a great outing.
Ryan Reynolds set the tone like right in the opening sequence with that whole NSYNC bye 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 dance routine as he's massacring everybody with the corpse of Logan.
His spine and skull.
Yeah. It's like the adamantium skeleton of Logan. And then that was followed by just a short while after when he meets
the worst Wolverine.
He says, when they're about to fight for the first time, he says, you know, get your special sock, nerds. This is going to be what you're looking for, basically.
That encompasses
what he pretty much summed it up. Yeah.
They knew the task of this film, and I think they nailed it.
It was the biggest surprise for me of this film. Was that it was generally, I don't want to call it meaningless, but it was not overall that important to the overall MCU.
For sure.
There was a couple of things that they did that were shocking that are important for the MCU. One of which is they left the door wide open for Hugh Jackman to continue to play Wolverine going into the future.
Borderline said he was.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that really shocked me. Not just that they kind of left the door cracked, but it was basically like a given, like, yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah.
He even makes the joke on a couple couple of different occasions, like, they're going to make you do this till you're 90.
And he's literally like, he goes to walk away after they have shawarma, and Deadpool calls him back. He's like, no, you're part of my crew now. So like, he's there with Deadpool in that universe.
And not only Hugh Jackman Wolverine, but all of the other big cameo characters that you mentioned that appeared in the film. Those also, other than Chris Evans as Johnny Storm.
Yeah, because
that's the only one. Gone. Yeah, he doesn't make it.
Yeah, because they left the door.
Doesn't make it.
They left the door wide open with that when Deadpool tries to make good on his promise, where he's like, I can restore your universe, but she's like, the past is what made him who he is.
Right.
He's the hero he is now. And then it's like, well, I got some friends that are stuck there. What can you do? So he says that to, I believe her name is B-15, and she's like, we'll see what I can do. Right. Which again is just like, so Snipes is there, Jennifer Gardner is there, Channing Tatum is there.
And they intentionally showed them left alive. They survived the assault on Cassandra Nova's compound, which is the giant Ant-Man's body.
Which is funny,
It's very funny. So those were big surprises. The other big one that I told you that on the negative side was that it wasn't particularly meaningful for the overall MCU, except one thing that really stood out to me as I thought about it after the fact, that I was like, oh, that was very intentional, and that is probably going to come into play down the line. It became super relevant after the announcements at SDCC, which is where they announced this concept of a central being in every universe, an anchor being.
Yeah.
So they introduced that concept to the multiverse in the MCU, to where in this case, Wolverine, Logan Wolverine, Logan Wolverine was the anchor being for that universe.
Universe.
Yeah, in the Fox universe. So when he died, that universe basically began to deteriorate. Eventually it would just completely die.
Yeah.
And every universe has an anchor being. And so that became hyper relevant after the weekend's announcements at SCCC, particularly around the concept of Tony Stark, Iron Man, and things like that. So now I'm wondering, they clearly introduced that with intention to use it.
Or
and I'm wondering,
we think.
I'm wondering if that's part of how they're going to get around and do their soft reboot for the overall MCU eventually. Maybe Tony Stark Iron Man, who dies in Endgame, was the anchor being for the 616 universe, and it is gradually dying.
Yeah.
And there has to be a reset. And, maybe that's why Galactus eats these universes. He eats universes.
Yeah, it's possible.
You know what I mean? And that's where it hunts universes where the anchor being has died. And that's how they set that up. So that really stood out to me after the announcements of RDJ. But the overall Deadpool Wolverine, for me personally, like, it was fun. It did its job. The only things that I stood out to me was it was, from a story perspective, it was a little lacking. Just wasn't much there. It was, it's just for fun. Go in and watch just a bunch of,
just going to save his universe, save his friends.
Gratuitous, like, fight scenes, stuff like, which is fun. That's cool. But though it was a shock how little it was driven into the main MCU, other than to introduce these little things here and there.
I thought for sure that it was going to be connected to the greater MCU.
We speculated on it for a year.
I thought it was going to introduce, the New Mutants, possibly tease them or set up like a big open door, because
no Charles Xavier.
Yeah, because you're getting rid of the Fox universe. So in that movie, you would think the perfect opportunity to set up the new one would be right there. They didn't, which I would have liked to see, but I still think it worked. And depending on what their plans are, this might be for the best, because now we know after San Diego Comic-Con that they're doing they're quietly pivoting away from Kang.
Yeah.
Which I was telling you off camera, I think it's hilarious how Avengers 5 was supposed to be the Kang dynasty, and now Avengers 5 is Doomsday, but they're not mentioning anything about Kang. They're just like, yeah, what are you talking about? Like, they're literally ignoring it. They never announced that at a Comic-Con or anything like that, or made the logo for it, or that Jonathan Majors ever played Kang, which I guess is smart, although I feel like it's a little odd to ignore it, because he was such a big part for the 5 years. He was in the second season of Loki. He was in the Ant-Man film. You introduced him in the first season of Loki. So how do you just ignore that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's weird and kind of off-putting to not at least acknowledge the pivot.
Maybe in a film they will. Maybe they don't want to do it publicly because of all the PR crap with Majors and the studio stuff. So maybe within a movie they'll acknowledge, what happened to Kang.
I don't know. At this point, it's if you're not going to acknowledge it, just
when they get rid of actors and stuff like that, they did it with in Mando season 3 with Gina
Yeah.
Carano. They're like, everyone's like, you know, where's she go? And it's like, oh, she's on a starfighter. She's doing, you know, doing something over there. Cara Dune, you know, she's over there.
I think they just wanted everything to be focused on the positive. Because
sure.
they've had so much negative for so long, they needed this to be really positive. You're coming off a really strong performance by Deadpool and Wolverine over the weekend. You really want to build on that momentum.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense from a business perspective because this was clearly their Hail Mary. This weekend is their Hail Mary to try and recoup the fans that have been disgruntled and have been screaming like, hey, what the freak are you guys doing? Like to try and appease them, recoup some of that goodwill.
It's going to work. It's working.
Depending. Right, we still have to see the product.
Right, but as of now, like,
because that's what everybody says about Star Wars too. So it's like I'm still very much in the you're gonna have to show me camp.
But this is different in this. I mean, yes, you're gonna have to show me. But we got Deadpool and Wolverine, which super solid, lot of fun, right? Box office is clearly reflecting that the majority of people are digging this film.
Sure.
Word of mouth is getting around. So you got that coupled with the announcements at San Diego Comic-Con, because even besides all the Jonathan Majors stuff that went on in the real world, right? Kang as a character wasn't received that well within the MCU.
No, because of the way they used him. Yeah,
people liked him. Jonathan Majors did do a good job as the character.
It was the way they used him,
right? But he was not comparable to Thanos in the way I think Feige and Marvel was hoping. He was just, we were like, yeah, he's cool, we like him, but they needed, you know, coming off Endgame in their mind and anyone's mind, you know, they're like, we need something just as good or better. Didn't happen. So like, oh, so maybe the fans did really want Galactus and Doctor Doom. And then we're getting Galactus and Fantastic Four First Steps. And now we're getting Doctor Doom and Doom. So it's like, it literally seems like as of Deadpool and Wolverine, they're like, oh, so like if we do what they want, they'll give us money? Weird. Now, with that said, it's totally like that in the sense RDJ is a total cash grab. I'm excited for it. I know a lot of people are upset about it. I'm excited about it because he's just going to be like a variant of Doctor Doom. I know the internet, or a good chunk of the internet, it's like, oh, but like we want a Cillian Murphy, which would be awesome. But I just think this is going to be a variant of Doom. I don't see RDJ playing Doom for like the next 10 years. This is just to get people back into the theater to see what they're setting up with Secret Wars. And then it's almost a reset going forward after Secret Wars.
Yeah.
So they just need to get everyone back to be like, look what we're doing now. See, we're going to listen, or hopefully we're going to listen. And then this is what we're doing forward. This is our apology. Hopefully it's their apology. And then after Secret Wars, everything is kosher again.
Well, before we go full bore into RDJ and Doomsday and all of that kind of stuff.
It's so important. It's hard to get, get in the weeds.
Let's wrap up the thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. The other thing I do absolutely want to mention is this was Hugh Jackman's best performance as Wolverine, I think.
Oh, is it your favorite one?
In the entire, next to Logan. Logan was
so different.
It was a complete performance, but his versatility in this movie I thought was really good, even though there were some parts where it's kind of got a little bit redundant in terms of like their back and forth, and for me, where it was just kind of the same thing over and over again. And Ryan Reynolds' shtick, that is just kind of Ryan Reynolds in a Deadpool costume. It does. I'm kind of gotten used to it now, so it doesn't land as hard as it used to.
I still love it
because it's just kind of the same thing on a loop, and that's just his sense of humor. But I've been watching him do this now for like 15
do what he does.
Years. Yeah, so it's like at some point it does get a little bit old for me, but overall, definitely, I think this was one of his best. It was one of his best two performances for Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I really, really liked it, and the movie did its job.
Yeah, I would say because they are so, you know, when talking about Logan, because Logan, like you said, is a complete performance. It's a lot more dramatic, more serious.
Yeah.
This is his best Wolverine performance as like comic book fun action Wolverine, if that makes sense, like popcorn blockbuster Wolverine. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's just the fan service. He's in the yellow suit.
Yeah,
that alone,
and you get all the Deadpool. The Deadpool core, you just get all these different variants of Deadpool, which, by the way, it was Blake Lively voicing Lady Pool in the movie, which we thought was awesome.
Matthew McConaughey.
You never
as
see
Cowboy
her face,
Pool,
which was a little bit disappointing, but it was her.
I like Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Pool because that was like
Matthew McConaughey as Cowboy Pool.
That stuff always makes me laugh because it's like, you know, Ryan Reynolds just made a call one day. It's like, hey man, I got this idea. Would you voice like 5 lines for? You just got to do the voiceover. He's like, all right.
Yeah. And I did like Cassandra Nova as the
she was great.
The villain. I thought that she did a good job.
Yeah.
It was a little bit weird what they did with her, where they sent her to the void, but she didn't really have to stay there, but she decided to stay there because she was able to be kind of like the empress.
Yeah, should have made her happy.
The void, whatever.
I thought I didn't,
and I was a little bit surprised we didn't get Professor X at some point.
Yeah, the way they explained it kind of made sense though, because she never even met Professor X.
Yeah,
but Yeah, her performance was really solid. It wasn't like an amazing Thanos performance, but she did what she needed to do.
Emma Corrin did a great job with her.
That's her name, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Emma Corrin. Yeah, I thought she did a great job with the character, and I could definitely see them bringing her back at some point. That would be interesting to see her play off of her brother at some point in the future. But that'll be for the Mutant Saga.
Channing Tatum, that was so good.
Channing Tatum, yeah, I didn't mention.
Good.
The only thing is, I will say, is as fun as it was in this movie, like self-contained.
So good.
It was such a great way of us seeing like, oh my gosh, thank God that they did not do this. It would have been a train wreck.
I think
his accent, his Cajun accent was abysmal.
Well, they were making fun of it. I think that was like the point.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like that movie would have been, it would likely
Someone
would
get this
have
guy's
been
subtitles.
A train wreck.
So good. I think there's a lot of characters in the MCU that can carry their own films, right? There's a bunch, and I think that's one of them where they're great in like an ensemble, but they're not necessarily going to be good in their own solo film. And Gambit, or at least Channing Tatum Gambit, is probably a good example of that. But in this ensemble, so good.
It was fun.
The way they did it, so good. He looked ripped right out of the books.
Yeah.
It was. And then the fact that like, he was very self-aware that he never appeared in any of the Fox Universe movies. He's like, I wish I could have shown them who I was. He's like, I wish I knew where I was born.
Some of us never did.
So yeah, so good. I was like, I love how self-aware everything is.
But I would say all of the people that showed up and became part of like the team in the movie. Daphne Keane came back as X-23.
She's great.
Yeah, she was really good. You had Jennifer Garner come back as Elektra, which I think that was the one that I was like, you could have swapped that one out for another character.
I love Jennifer Garner in real life,
I do too. I really like Jennifer Garner.
She's very likable.
As a character in the movie, I was like, there's probably a handful of other characters that I would like to have seen in place of that one.
With the Ben Affleck reference.
did like the Ben Affleck joke where you're like, oh, there's no Daredevil. It's like, it's fine.
That's why he's so good.
Yeah, it was very funny. But yeah, it was good. There was a lot of fan service in this movie. And if you are a Deadpool fan, you definitely got out of this what you were hoping for. But it just nothing broader MCU.
I want to see Deadpool interact with Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man.
That would be funny.
So bad.
That would be funny.
So bad. Oh man, that'd be great.
But before we move on to Doomsday and SDCC stuff,
one
of our sponsors, Stern Pinball, actually sent us a amazing pinball machine, Deadpool pinball machine, into studio for us to check out. So check this out.
Deadpool is the character everyone is talking about lately, and today's sponsor, Stern Pinball, is bringing his crazy unhinged antics to the game room. We're huge fans of Stern Pinball, so having them as one of the long-term sponsors has been amazing, because we've been able to play and show you all many of their most awesome pinball machines, like Venom, Godzilla, Jaws, Stranger Things, Avengers, and now Deadpool. In the game, the Merc with the Mouth teams up with iconic X-Men characters Wolverine, Dazzler, Domino, and Colossus to battle infamous villains Juggernaut, Sabretooth, Mystique, Sauron, and Mr. Sinister. Stern was kind enough to lend us the game for a couple of weeks, and we spent a ridiculous amount of time slashing and flipping our way up the Deadpool scoreboard. A couple of major standouts are that the game has custom speech by longtime Deadpool voice actor Nolan North, as well as a little Deadpool bash toy and a katana sword ball lock. There's also a motorized disco ball, and what would a Deadpool pinball machine be without ninjas, vampires, T-Rex, Megalodon, and of course, chimichangas. This game has Deadpool fan service all over the place. We can't recommend you guys try it enough. And through Stern's Insider Connected app for iOS and Android, you could use the location map to find any connected Stern machine near you. You'll also be able to earn achievements and connect with other pinheads around the world. Just visit sternpinball.com or use our link in the description below to get your game on.
All right, so if you get a chance, go to sternpinball.com and check that one out, because for real, that thing is a ton of fun. All the pinball machines they sent over, we probably played those things a ridiculous amount. They were quite disruptive, actually, work-wise. But on to the big news of the weekend, which is Robert Downey Jr.
We already kind of got into it a little bit.
Coming in as, first of all, it was the Russo brothers are back. That was not really that shocking. That had leaked a couple days prior
but it was
to
confirmed.
San Diego Comic-Con. It was confirmed. So that wasn't a huge shock. The big surprise was RDJ. For me, I know that there's some people complaining about it, but after they announced it, I was like, oh, this is really smart. This is really smart for two reasons. One, there's really solid comic precedent for it. And second, because they're setting it up to where he will clearly, in my opinion, you kind of already said it, in my opinion as well, he's going to play a variant of Tony Stark who becomes Doctor Doom. He goes the opposite direction of the hero Iron Man that we're all used to, and he becomes a version of Doctor Doom. And again, there is comic book precedent for this in Marvel Comics and a couple of different stories. And as Marvel typically does, they're going to make some kind of an amalgamation of a couple things, I think.
I think most prominently they're probably going to pull from the What If Demon in a Bottle story from like, was it 2010, 2015?
Yep.
And
then Infamous Iron Man is the other.
Infamous Iron Man. But in that story, it makes more sense because they're doing the Fantastic Four, is Reed Richards' roommate was not Victor Von Doom, but instead Tony Stark.
Right.
So that would make all the sense in the world, especially if you're doing a variant, which is all those what if stories are. They're like Elseworlds, alternate reality stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's probably...
And you said Demon in an Armor, right?
They said Demon in a Bottle or Demon in Armor?
I don't remember. But
Demon in a Bottle is the original story.
Yeah, that's the original story. So Demon in an Armor, it's a what if story.
Yeah.
And so those two, and I think what they're likely going to do, because Marvel never does anything straight out. They never do, okay, we're taking from this comic and this is the entire story and we're just going to do it verbatim. They never do that. They take pieces and they do their own thing. And they've done that from the beginning. So that's fine. So I think that's probably what we're going to get in this scenario is we're going to get an amalgamation of those two stories. But it's going to be a Tony Stark version. They're saying it's Victor Von Doom. That's what they were saying over the weekend, but I don't think they're telling the truth.
Yeah,
like they've done in the past.
I think it was Joe Russo who said it. He's like, now Victor Von Doom.
And it could be that based on the Demon in an Armor story, they're sticking with that part of the story where it is Victor Von Doom, but it's really Tony Stark. You know what I mean? It's like they've swapped or he's taken his mind or something to that effect. Or they could just be saying that because they're not going to tell you exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
you know
either
what I mean?
way, I would put all my chips on it's just a variant of Doom. Like, because there's a lot of people upset. It's like, I don't want him as Doctor Doom. It's like, this is not going to be the main Doom.
I'm putting all my chips on. I'm putting all my chips on. It's a variant of Tony Stark, who has become a version of Doom. But he's not actually Victor Von Doom. It's actually, because it's going to be too hard, and I think they're smart enough to know this. It's going to be very hard for the audience after this long of knowing him as Iron Man, Tony Stark Iron Man, for him to be seen as Victor Von Doom.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, because whether it's Tony Stark who's Doctor Doom or, Victor Von Doom who's Doctor Doom, that's what I mean by that. There's just a variant of Doctor Doom, and whether... it's Tony Stark Doctor Doom or Victor Von Doom Doctor Doom. Just a variant of Doctor Doom in general is what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what's going to happen. But the other thing that this does for them, and this is why I think it's really smart, is clearly this is going to have to move towards some kind of a soft reboot of Marvel.
Well, Secret Wars almost guarantees that just based on the storyline alone.
So that means that Robert Downey Jr., you're going to want to keep Doctor Doom going because you're just now introducing the Fantastic Four.
And
but you know that RDJ is not going to play Doctor Doom for the next 10, 15 years. That's not a thing.
No, he'll probably only be, I imagine, in Doomsday and Secret Wars.
That's what I think too. So, well, I think he might appear actually in Fantastic Four, at least some sort of like an intro.
That's possible.
So I think that's really smart because you introduce this concept. You let the story play out through Secret Wars. You make him the main villain in Secret Wars, and then you crack open the door to introduce the actual Victor Von Doom in this soft reboot. Because at the end of Secret Wars, obviously the entire multiverse is going to be reset, and we're going to be left with something very, very new and different. So for that reason, I think it's smart, but I think this is all but guarantees. This is Marvel's big Hail Mary to bring everybody back, and to kind of, okay, guys, remember why you loved all this in the first place, which is, in my opinion, smart at this point. Just remind everybody why they love the Marvel Universe. And then reset. Because at that point, you're going to have a new Captain America. You're going to have a new Spider-Man. You're going to have all these, because all of these players are going to be older. And Fantastic Four, they showed a bunch of stuff from Fantastic Four. They put together a proof of concept video, basically, with a bunch of animatics and some images that look very, very cool. They even they showed everybody the Fantastic Car. And the style that they're going to be using for the film.
They showed footage of the film, and Galactus, they teased him very quickly. He's peering through a window, which is really cool. I think
what I assume is at the Baxter Building.
Yeah, I think in summary with Deadpool and Wolverine and even the San Diego Comic-Con announcements, they've realized that they need to correct course. Deadpool made several comments that the MCU has been failing the last 5 years in the film, literally called out the multiverse saga, saying L after L after L, miss after miss after miss. So they're very well aware if they let Ryan Reynolds put that in the movie as Deadpool.
Telling Wolverine you're coming in at a bit of a low point.
Exactly.
Welcome to the MCU.
So, doing all the stuff they did there, then getting the Russo brothers, who had the 4 most loved films, generally speaking, out of the MCU, then bringing RDJ, the face of the MCU, back to get butts back in seats so we could all, see where they're going for the future to hopefully course correct. It's all part of the plan. And I think, I think it's very smart and it could possibly work. I'm currently on the hype train because of how good Deadpool and Wolverine is. So I want to be optimistic because the first 10 years were great. And if they're going back to that, which clearly they're playing that nostalgia card, it's very possible. So I'm on board.
Yeah. And it's not even to mention Captain America, Brave New World. We got a little bit more about that. And the Thunderbolts. We haven't gotten our first trailer for that just yet, but we got to see a little bit more about the cast. We don't really know what role those two movies are fully going to play into where all this is leading, but Fantastic Four is obviously going to play a massive role heading into Doomsday.
They confirmed they're going to be in Doomsday. So yeah,
they said they'll be in Doomsday.
Yeah, we'll get more info at D23, which is like in 2-3 weeks here.
Exactly right. Yeah, just a couple of weeks, D23. And the anticipation is that they held some things back for their big, event in Anaheim.
They did Daredevil for sure because Charlie Cox was just said something about it that we'll get more info at D23.
And it's like, will that play any kind of a big major role? It's like, you know what I mean? So many of these things, there's a lot of question marks still. So I think that this is definitely their Hail Mary. And I absolutely think that they're swinging for the fences because they know they need to at this point. But whether or not that it actually pays off and they're able to actually bring it home, we'll find out. But it was certainly a shock when he pulled off that mask and it was RDJ under there. I did not expect that. I had heard the rumors a couple days prior, but I totally dismissed it. I was like, there's no way.
My mouth dropped when I saw it on my phone. I was like, that's out of left field.
Yeah,
that's
totally unexpected.
Very smart, though.
Yeah, very smart. After thinking about it, it's like, oh, I see.
People are like, it's just a cash grab. It's like, yeah, obviously. And it's gonna work. Like, what do you mean?
And again, it's smart because you're gonna get the real Victor Von Doom. It's just they're going to finish out this multiverse saga, and then after that, Kevin Feige has already said we're moving into the mutant saga after. So
let's see, because the multiverse saga wasn't very multiversy. So let's hope the mutant saga is
more mutiny.
More mutiny. But yeah, there was like some other small announcements. We got the DC logo. DC Studios has a new logo, which is basically their old logo.
It looks very cool.
They retired in 2005, so that's back. James Gunn knows what he's doing. He's pulling on that nostalgia, so I'm happy for that. We got our first trailer at Creature Commandos, which looks really good. It's going to be the first official DCU thing under James Gunn, with Superman shortly following, like around 6 months later in the Superman film. New Penguin trailer looks dope, which is really cool. And then
that's coming very soon.
Very soon, September, I believe. And then some
first trailer or look at the new season of Rings of Power.
Rings of Power,
which was getting poked fun at.
Superman and Lois.
Final
Superman season. People are happy about that.
So there was a few other things, and they got more into the DC panel. Got more into the All In initiative that's coming, DC, which we'll be covering extensively on the main channel. Here on Variant. So keep an eye out for that. But the big news obviously was Marvel. That's where
it's always holidays. Yeah. Next year will be DC though. They will dominate next year because literally Superman comes out, I think, a week or the week of San Diego ComiCon 2025. So how this year was very much Marvel, Deadpool and Wolverine. Next year will be DC Superman.
That's the next big conversation that we have to have is DC with what Marvel's doing now. With Doomsday coming in 2026 and Superman coming just before that, these two are going to really go head to head, I think, here pretty soon. This is going to become, and I think that's big part of the calculation that Marvel made of like, we need to take a big swing now because James Gunn looks like he's doing some business.
No, he looks like he's cooking. We haven't seen anything official yet, but like all the moves he's making, he's doing some fan service and he's pulling on the nostalgia and like classic DC that we love. So
we'll see.
But we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.